Hello and welcome everyone to my Java development with Spring Boot tutorial, Part 8, JPA Many-to-Many Mapping. What is many-to-many relationship? Suppose that each player has many tournaments and each tournament has many players, so the players and tournaments are many-to-many relationship. Let us create a tournament entity. We need to annotate with entity. We may want to annotate it with table, but it is not required. We specify table name equal tournament. Next, we annotate the primary key column by ID. We specify that the primary key tab is integer, column name is ID. We also want generated value strategy map is and the identity. Tournament entity has a column name. Type is string. Now we can generate the getter and setter for ID and name. Now we are ready to do many-to-many mapping between the player and tournament entities. Each player has many tournaments, so we can model the tournaments as either a list or a set, but it is better to not use more than two lists of entities inside a single entity class for efficient query. We create a getter and setter for tournaments. Let's go to the tournament class. Each tournament also has many players, so we have a set of players here. We create a getter and setter for the players. We are now ready to do the mapping. The first thing we need to do is to annotate many-to-many on the player property in the tournament entity. And in the player entity, we also need to annotate many-to-many on the tournaments property. Many-to-many is a symmetric relationship, so we can specify either side to be the owner. Let us select the player to be the owner of the mapping. We specify John table. Name. This is the name of the John table. Let us name player tournament. Next, we need to specify the John column. This column maps to the player primary key, so we specify it player ID. We also need to specify the inverse John column. So we name it tournament ID. So we are done with the many mapping on the owner side. In the target side, we need to tell it map by this tournament's property. So we go to the tournament entity. In the many-to-many mapping, we are specifying map by tournaments. So we are done with the many-to-many mapping. However, it does not work yet. Let us start up the app and see why. Here we go, the exception. So it's saying that use of one-to-many or many-to-many targeting an unmapped class player. It says that the property players in the tournament entity is referring to player, and this player entity is unmapped. The reason is that the tournament is in the chess database and the player is in the user database. So the entity manager for the tournament does not know anything about the player entity. That's why it's complaining. So one way to fix this is to move the tournament entity into the user database. Let us do that. Now we drag the tournament entity into the user package. Let us restart the app again. Okay, so it started up successfully, but it gives an exception. I'm guessing that because the tournament table is not yet created and it tried to drop the foreign key. The same thing is other entity like car, player, and profile we met before. So if we scroll up, it will say that there's an exit, and it was trying to dropping the foreign key constraint. So it's okay. So that is a useful exception, but it doesn't harm us anything. It started up successfully. Now, if we check the database, we should see the tournament table, the John table. Let's check that. Show table. Now we see that we have the new table tournament, and we also have the John table player tournament. And let's describe the player tournament table. We should see the John column there. Here we go. The player ID mapping to the player table, and the tournament ID mapping to the tournament table. If we are curious, we restart the app again. It should be successful and no exception. Let's try that. Here we go. Started. Next, we are going to retest the save player with the tournament's information. First, we are going to update the Postman save player request to include the tournament's information for the player. We then also need to modify the user service info save player method. We need to create tournament repositories so we can save players' tournaments. Add new interface, tournament repository. And it need to extend JPA repository. The tab is tournament. And the ID tab is integer. Now we go back to the user service info. Now we can save tournaments. To use this tournament repository, we need to auto-wire it. Now we can set the player's valid tournaments. These tournaments need to be converted to a set. We can use stream collect. That is it. And we are ready to do the test for fun. Let us restart the servers to honor the new code. This is successful. Started. So we can issue the request. Save player request from the postman now. Send. So we stop at this breakpoint. We can step through to see how it goes. Successfully save all tournaments. Save. Also successful. We let it go. Now, we check the database. Show table. Now we check the tournament. We have two tournaments. So tournament 2 and tournament 1. Okay. How about the player? We have one player. That's correct. And we should have some association in the join table player tournament. That is correct. Also, so player with ID 1 has two tournaments, having ID 1 and 2. So our many-to-many mapping works correctly. So far, we have not done any test on updating the player. Let us do that now. First, we need to add a new method in the user servers to update player. Next, we add a port endpoint in the simple controller to support update player. We use port mapping, value equal update player. Next, we are going to the user service info and implement the update method. First, we need to find the player in the database corresponding to the player ID. And now, with that newly updated entity, we are going to save it. Okay, so the app started up successfully. Let us check the database. We have 4 tables, and let's check the content of the tables. There, empty. Let's show on there tournament. Also empty. So they are all empty as expected. So let's go to the postman and issue the save player request before we update. Now we save the player, send the request. We got some platform, let it go. Successful. And we checked. We have 2 tournaments. We have 1 player, correct? And we have how many? We have 2 associations, that's correct. Player A1 has 2 tournaments, which is correct. So now let's see that from the player table we have the player name is A player, and now from the postman we issue the update player request. I made this request beforehand so we can save some time. So this request is to update the player where ID equal 1 and the new name is player new name. Let's now send. Successful. Okay. Now we check the database. From the player, now we see player new name. It's correct. Player tournament should be the same as before, and the tournament table should be the same as before. We now conclude that our many-to-many mapping works well. We were able to add a new player together with all related entities. Also, we were able to update just the player information. Let us revisit the save player method. In this method, we save all tournaments and then we save the player. So what happens if the save all tournaments is successful, but the save player is exception? So in this case, we have an issue. So that's one thing we can do, is to annotate this method, the server's method, with transactional. Make sure that we use the transactional annotation from the Spring Framework.transaction.annotation. We have 2 databases, so we need to make sure that we specify the correct transaction manager here. So we say value equal player transaction manager. So by default, if there is a runtime exception in this code block, Spring will roll back the transaction for us. So make sure that we throw runtime exception if there is an exception. So we try and we catch. And we throw runtime exception here. Let us restart the app and test. Successful. So let us issue the save player request from the postman. Send. 200, okay, successful. Now we check the database table. So the tournament has 2 records in there. The player has 1 record in there. So, and also the player tournament. Had 2 records in there, which is correct and still expected. Now, assume that we throw some exception here. We suppose not to see the tournament's records saved at all because the transaction will be rolled back. Now we restart the app. We set the breakpoint right here. We issue the save player request again. And the breakpoint is hit. We let it step over. So it saved the tournaments. But because of the exception, it will not save anything. It roll back. We can check the database table now. Not been saved in the tournament table. Not been saved in the player table. And nothing saved in the player tournament table. Now we roll back the test code. End of part 8. I hope that you found my video helpful and view all the parts of the tutorial, part 1 through 7. Thank you very much and have a nice day.